Good day, YouTube. Do you like training? Well, if the answer is yes, the Air Force is a great way for you to get trained. I'm going to talk about that today. It'll begin right after basic training. You'll go to your tech school on the enlisted side. That could last 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, depending on the job. If you're an officer, you'll get to your first base and they'll get a training rip for you to attend your tech school. For me, I had to wait about a year. Maybe more like 14 months before I went to school when I commissioned for my job. In the meantime, it was on-the-job training, learned through the NCOs and the other people that were there before me. In the Air Force, once you're done with your technical training, afterwards you're going to get upgrade training. So you're going to have different skill levels. So 3 levels right after tech school, 5 level, 7 level, and so forth on the enlisted side. After tech school for an officer, you are a 3 level and eventually an expert at the 4 level. Other types of training that you can get in the Air Force are professional military education. That's a great, outside of your job, it could be leadership, it could be military customs and courtesies above and beyond, more than you can think of. On the enlisted side, there's Airman Leadership School, NCO Academy, Senior NCO Academy. On the officer side, there is Squadron Officer School, Air Command Staff College, Air War College. So professional military education is great, and that's actually a requirement for you to get promoted in the future as well. You have to have your PME, professional military education, completed. With your job, that is considered training in depth. Are you an expert? Hopefully the answer is yes. And I talked about that upgrade training. Over the years, you're going to get more training in your job. So you'll be deep in knowledge in your job. For professional military education, think of that as breadth outside of your job, outside of your depth, your expertise. You can also get training in the Air Force for additional duties. Let's say your supervisor approaches you and says, you have been selected to do this additional duty, something that has nothing to do with your job, but you have to do it. That happens often. Additional duty. When it happens, welcome it, ask questions, ask if you have training for that. Hopefully the answer is yes. Another type of training is special duty training, and that is, let's say you're going to do a job outside of your career field, whether it's an instructor. The example that I give for myself, I left personnel for 3 years, and I was the director of equal opportunity at my unit for 3 years, and I enjoyed that a lot because that's human resources. It came with the tech school as well, and it just happened to be at Patrick Air Force Base in Cocoa Beach, Florida. That was a great opportunity. Sometimes you'll volunteer for training, which is what I would recommend. Sometimes you'll be voluntold that you've been selected for the training. So whichever way it approaches you, make the most of that training, and sometimes that's going to lead to opportunities in the future as well. I would recommend anytime you have questions, you ask, regardless of what the question may be. Another way to look at that is the training could be local in your military installation at your base. And often it is at a different location, which means you get to go TDY, temporary duty, to another location, whether it's a few days, a week, or 3 months, like I did with Equal Opportunity. Today I also want to share something called Virtual Military Experience and Training, also known as VMET. And this is 18 pages of my career. I'm going to put the link where you can access your VMET at the bottom in the description of this video. All you need is either your ID card with the chip, or you can put in your social and a password. I don't remember how that works, but I've done it before. So look at that if you want to look at your VMET. Now, the VMET applies to all branches. So it doesn't matter if you're Coast Guard, Navy, Marines, Army, Air Force. It applies to all branches across. And I will say that this information is good. It's not a resume, and it's, for some reason, not all-inclusive. But what you'll find is how often you were in the career field, what job you did according to the training. And another thing here are occupation description for service file. In my case, personnel. It tells you what you could do in the civilian world as well, and what my job or my training led me to have in the end. It's good information. All of it is here. This says 18 years, even though I'm at 20 right now. It even has my professional military education, the equal opportunity course that I talked about, my first job when I was a firefighter. It has all that information here. It tells you how long I was in the career field. This goes back to 1996. Good information. VMet, the actual link will be in the description. Other examples of training that I've volunteered for as a human resource individual or bystander intervention training. That was 3 or 4 days of training at Maxwell Air Force Base. When I went to the sexual assault response coordinator on base and I said, hey, do you need help with anybody facilitating any classes? She said, yes, absolutely. We were familiar with each other, but you'd have to go to training. Where's the training? Maxwell Air Force Base, which was my first base. Great. So I went to the training there, and my commitment was for 2 years to facilitate male classes. That male as in these classes, bystander intervention training, were separated between males and females. They were slightly different. The next one that I volunteered for just a few weeks ago was Master Resiliency Training. I volunteered to do that so I can teach on base or facilitate on base resiliency. And I'm going to make a separate video, part 2, about what I learned, because I think it's probably the most important video that I will ever make, making sure that we are resilient when something happens to us, whether it's big or small, that we can bounce back. Another one was at Maxwell Air Force Base again in Alabama, and that was Mediator Training. My recommendations for training is to know your duties, know your job inside and out. Remember that sometimes you won't be able to be the expert for whatever reason. Maybe it's your workload, maybe it's because you're new to the job. So clarify when needed. Find the experts and learn from that person. Definitely find out who the experts are. Another recommendation is don't reinvent the wheel. If somebody's already done it, take their notes, see how that works for you, use that information, and if you need to tweak it, great, do that. Definitely seek out training opportunities. There are many training opportunities in the Air Force. They have actually opened doors for me, for my career in the Air Force as a enlisted member, officer, reservist, Air Force civilian. Many doors have been opened because of the trainings that I love to do, that the Air Force said, hey, if you're interested, we're going to get you trained and we're going to send you somewhere to do it so you can come back and be an asset to the organization. The last thing that I want to talk about today is I learned through a mentor a long time ago that any training certificates that I get, I should put in one binder. And that's what I've done. I'm going to show you my binder. It has all of my training certificates for 20 years of service, with the exception of one, an additional mediator certificate that I have to now go home and find because it's not on here. My recommendation, last recommendation, is to create a binder with all of your history, your training certificates. For me, I do it because if I need to update my resume, which I do often, I get my information from the training courses that I've been to, certificates. The other thing is this is a good historic piece for my family that I leave behind. They can say, hey, Grandpa Hugo or Great-Grandpa Hugo was in the Air Force, and this is what he did, and this is where he did it, and this is when he did it. Optional, but highly recommended. Somebody mentored me a long time to do that, and it just makes things a lot easier as well for us. So this is my binder. Has a lot of information, as you can tell here. Airman Leadership School, Community College of the Air Force, previous biography. One of the things that I like are history. In other words, who was in my class at that time? My awards are there. And what I do with those pictures is I actually write down the names of the people who were in my class, because we tend to forget people's names, at least I do sometimes, and this will help me. And here is an example of my binder, and this is me 16 years ago, Maxwell Air Force Base, when I attended Airman Leadership School. Here is my class, and I was a senior airman at the time. I hope this has been helpful. I found this t-shirt at a thrift shop for $1, vintage, either 1970s or 1980s Air Force. Love it. Have a great day. Take care.